Hi y'all, my name is Mike Peace and welcome to my shop. If you know a knitter or a crocheter, if I got a perfect handcrafted gift for them that we're going to make today, and that's this yarn bowl. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, but I did watch YouTube, and I found out that basically this allows you to relax the yarn by rolling it in a bowl, and it makes it easier to work with. And I'd like to give a shout out for my supporter Don Lyons, who suggested this, and I thought, really, a yarn bowl? Then my sister, a gourd artist, followed up about the same time, sent me a text, something about she had some friends and could I make a yarn bowl. So here I am. Let's get started. You know, there's an old saying that form follows function, so let's talk about a few basic design concepts. You want a somewhat heavy base, so it'll be stable. The walls can be thin, or you can have them from anywhere from a 1/4 inch up to a 1/2 inch. I'd have to say though, the thicker it is, the harder it is going to be to cut this slot. In terms of size, there's lots of different sizes will work. A typical size is 5 to 8 inches in diameter, or 125 millimeter to 200 millimeter for you metric. Height is about 2.5 inches to 4 inches. Or about 64 millimeter to about 100 millimeter. There is a small size for traveling folks, and I've seen one designed by Ernie Conover where he put a removable stand on it that would fit in a coffee cup holder in a car for someone who is traveling. Typically, you're going to turn this project in 2 steps. You're going to rough turn the bowl from a piece of green wood, and then after it dries you're going to return it. I'm going to skip that first step, or actually that step's already been done. If you're like me, you've got a number of dry bowls around, so I went out into my bowl stash as shown here and looked around for some suitable candidates, and I found these 3, and after looking over them I think I'm going to take this one from Bradford Pear. This was turned back in January of 2016. It's got fairly steep sides and a very flat bottom, and I think it'll allow me to enclose the top a little bit. So I think this will be a nice bowl blank for this. So step 1, I'm going to true up the tenon. I've made this with a very large chuck, so this has got a very nice base for the size. First, you're going to have to put it against something. I like to use these vacuum chucks that I have. They're threaded, so they go on. They've got a little fun foam, and I've got different sizes. So with this little bit of fun foam on it, it gives enough flexibility that it can hold most any form. And being hollow in the middle, it allows for sizes against the bottom. So I just kind of tighten that up a little bit. And feet just about parallel. Able to move back and forth doing the turner's dance with the bowl gouge on my hip, and just roll this over and just take these nice little angel shavings. You see, how fine wispy those shavings are. Not pressing hard at all. I'm just getting rid of little ripples. I'm not really shaping this. I'm just cleaning up some tiny little ridges left. Use my whole body, now I'm armed, to make this move. Okay, it's got a nice pleasing round shape. Tear out's gone. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and do some sanding before we reverse it. I'll do that power sand. My power sand, I'm using a Harbor Freight angle drill with some shop-made mandrels, and we're just going to hold this. Again, we're going to brace ourselves, and we're just going to do the turner's dance as we come around. I'm going to use a little 120 grit and just clean that up. We're going to slow that bowl down just a little bit. We'll slow it down to about 200. Bowls coming this way. I'm going to have this going in the opposite direction, so at the surface it's going to be going very, very slow. Turn on the strip. It's got a softer pad on it to allow it to flex a little bit more. I've got a pretty good sized set of jaws on here on this larger chuck. It matches this tenon. I'm going to orient the grain so I've got the grain running between the jaws. So in this case, this is the end grain going upright with the slot in the jaws on the top. That gives me a grain pattern against the jaws it'll give nice uniform pressure against similar strength grain. The first thing I want to do, I want to just kind of true up that jaw face just a little bit. Just come in again with a very nice scraping cut. Okay, coming in with this live cut is the hardest cut because it's going to have a tendency to skate back. So I want to make sure I've got this, the flute at 3 o'clock, bracing it a little bit with my finger, and just ease it in. Once I get that penetration, then I can kind of open it up just a little bit closer to 2 o'clock while it's cutting and have it break. Now, because this is such a steep bowl, I lose my bevel support going down, so I'm going to have to use a different tool. Make sure I got this cut pretty clean here. Okay, so I'm going to use what people call the bottom feeder, and basically that's just a bowl gouge with hopefully a fairly open flute, more U than V, although this one's a bit of a V. And then with a very traditional grind, at a very steep grind, so I can pick up that cut and ride the bevel to the middle. Now, wall thickness for this kind of bowl, it can be a 1/4 inch, could be a 1/2 inch, even thicker, whatever you like. You want some weight in the bottom of the bowl, as we discussed earlier in the design considerations, but I think I'm going to just cut it until I get a nice clean cut and live with whatever it is, whether it's 3/8 or a 1/2. I think I need to get a few more of those ripples out. Alright, I'm having a tough time getting rid of some of these ripples, so we're going to resort to a scraper. Shouldn't be a problem. Very heavy, I think it's 5/8 of an inch, at least a 1/2 inch thick, pretty thick scraper, so I'm just going to negative rake so I can have it flat on the tool rest and still not worry about a catch. Now I'm just going to take the ripples. I'm not removing a lot of wood, I'm just getting rid of, just doing finishing cuts. And I want to round off this corner here. Here's a little bit closer view of my negative rake scraper. It's a happens to be a sorbet, a 1-inch wide and a 1/2 inch thick. I've never been real happy with it before I decided to go ahead and turn it into a negative rake and put this profile on the top. So I've got 2 edges, and then I ground away a little bit at the heel to make it a little easier to sharpen. And I want to check for uniform thickness so it feels good. So I'll get my bowl calipers out. Hopefully, if this is the thickest part, I can just see a gap here, and that gap will follow all the way around. Or if it rubs and opens up a little bit, I know it's pretty close. That's a little depth of this. Again, we want a little heavier bottom. And that bottom, if I take care of the tenon, is going to be a little small. I don't want to take off any more on the bottom, it's just on the sides. Okay, I've got a wall thickness of about a 1/2 inch, which I can live with. I want this to be fairly weighty, comfortable. And now I want to do a little sanding. Alright, now comes the tricky part where we're going to, actually the easy part is really drawing this J-cut on here, the J-curve, and then we're going to cut it. That's going to be the hard part. They say you never demonstrate anything that you're doing for the first time. I had a hard time drawing on the bowl itself, so I think what made sense to me was draw it on a piece of paper. Now I'm going to actually use some masking tape, if it doesn't stick too badly to the paper. I was hoping I had enough overlap to hold. And see if I can't use that masking tape as a pattern. So I've got the tape marked in position. Tear out. Probably do better with a smaller drill bit to mark that center so I can come in from the other side. Alright, that small bit is now marked it. Now if I can get the right angle to come in there, you know, I might need to use my angle my angle drill. There's a thoughtful idea. It'll be a lot easier to get in there than with this, I think. Never used my sander, which is an angle drill. Yeah, that worked pretty well. I didn't get any significant tear out. Alright, for my next trick, I think what I'm going to do is use a coping saw. If I had a jeweler saw, this would probably be easier, but we're just going to make do here. Okay, here's the challenge. Cutting that slot. When I was cutting it previously, my coping saw of many years finally just died and fell apart, and I had to go out and buy a new one and finish that cut. You got to use whatever tools will work for you. I've used a rasp, round rasp, a small rasp. This may be a chainsaw file. I'm not sure. I picked it up at a flea market. Use 80 grit cloth, sandpaper. Trick I learned from Stuart Mortimer. Take your sandpaper, slice it into a bunch of ribbons and twist it, and you can get into some really nice areas around like that on all the way around. Of course, you need to put the spindle lock on to kind of hold it in place. So You just got to work all those things. If I come up with a better solution, I'll get back to you. Or if you got any hints on how an easier way to do this, please leave them in the comments below. And you can see what a challenge. I guess one of the cautions I'd have is if you're using any kind of power tool, be real careful not to let it run away from you, because if it digs in, like here or here, you're going to have a real challenge trying to get that out with sanding. The challenge is you got to make this just perfectly smooth where it won't snag, so it takes a lot of effort. And I'm learning that using coarse grit, don't feel bad about using 80 grit and get rid of all your tool marks and get all the corners round. Use some type of softer foam backing for some of this sanding, and just keep at it. It was a good move for me to leave this on the lathe. I've got to turn this off later, but I'll do that with a vacuum chuck. But having this held in place just makes it a heck of a lot easier to work. I may go ahead and take this chuck off the lathe so that'll secure it, and maybe see about setting that on a table to work it from the inside so I get a little different angle on the sanding. Okay, we're now going to reverse the bowl, and I'm going to use a vacuum chuck. This is the actual chuck I'm using. It's stacked MDF with a threaded Beal-tapped block with some 1/16 inch fun foam from Craft Store. So I'm going to take the bowl. I've still left the point from the live center to true it up, although that may not be exactly true when it comes to a vacuum chuck, but I'll just blend in the bottom. Walk down the tailstock, bring this in, and we're just going to take off this less than a 1/4 inch tenon. I'll probably blend these two together and keep a little bit of it since it's fairly wide, and I didn't make the bottom as thick as I might have. So we're going to put in the vacuum adapter. The vacuum adapter is just a rotary adapter. It's got 2 bearings in it that pops into the headstock. Increase the pressure. And I'm going to leave the tailstock support in position as long as possible. And I'm just going to take this down and blend it in. It looks like it's running fairly true. Speed up a little bit. It goes straight in. I'm just going to make a bit of an ogie here, tying those two together. Using a 1/2 inch bowl gap. By shear cut, I'm riding the bevel and just cutting on the bottom edge here. Light cut. The bevel supporting cut. And I think I've got it. All I got to do is sand it a little bit. Then I'm going to concave the bottom here just a little bit after I sand it. Okay, I'm going to take off the bottom a little bit. I'm going to use a very steep U-shaped bowl gouge, and then I'm going to follow it up with just a little bit of a scraper. So got that vacuum chuck going. That's the noise in the background. Turn this up a little bit. And very casually. Just trying to get rid of this little tailstock live center damage here in the middle, actually. Just concave this just gently, just a little bit. Okay, I've eliminated that damage just about. I don't think I'm going to use that scraper. I don't think I'm going to need it. going to sand this out real quick. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and texture the bottom, although this utility bowl won't get turned over very much, except when the owner first gets it. It's so easy to decorate. I'm going to go ahead and put a little texturing on the bottom. So I'm using a Wagner style tool. This is Ron Brown's Best, the 1/4 inch model. Turn the speed down to maybe less than 750, and just push it straight in and hold it for a while. I'll show you a close-up of that after I finish putting just a couple of little beads on the bottom. Then on the center, using my point tool, come in and put one little there, one there, one there, maybe one on the outside. Use my little non-woven abrasive pad to just kind of clean up the frizzies a little bit. And that just adds a nice little detail. I hope I've inspired you to try something new or try something again. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Y'all come back here.
Okay, just a few goofy headshots I need to include in this video in order that I can use a piece of software I use online called TubeBuddy that requires me to use a scene from the movie to make a thumbnail. So put up with it. Thanks.